Yeah, we're going into our final week of the group stage, and things are getting serious because this is do or die for most of the teams. And from what we summarized sort of last weekend, there's so many teams still able to go into that top 16 slots. Only 6 out of 16 teams have confirmed their spot in the top cut bracket. So there's a lot of games to be played this week, and this can also kind of be a teaser for the upcoming World Championships that it's always talked about for the past month. So I'm really excited for everything.
Yeah, this is the last week we have for a little while. A bit of a break with Worlds coming in next weekend. So we'll do our best to savor the upcoming matches, and we have an extra way of doing that. And what we've done is we've decided to do more games. That's going to be kind of cool. Instead of 4 per stream, we're going to be doing 5 matches per stream this week. So even more World Cup action coming your way. Now, of course, we wouldn't be here without our wonderful sponsors, GG Tour, Metafy, and of course Elgato, the amazing sponsors of the World Cup of VGC here. And of course, everybody working behind the scenes at Victory Road, working so hard to put on one of the best tournaments of the year, the best online tournament of the year. I'm just gonna say it, Evan. It's my favorite tournament online. It's so great. It's just great to be here.
I agree, because I'm playing a huge part in like the organizing, and I've been trying to make everything run as smoothly as possible. And honestly, it's really fulfilling to be able to do so, and juggling hundreds of players at once. It's a little bit of a challenge. It can be stressful at times, but ultimately it's always very fulfilling and always nice to see all the players from all over the world interact with each other. So before we move on, let's go into our socials to remind you guys how you guys can follow us with the journey of all the players. So on Twitter, VGC Victory Road, do follow this Twitter account because it's gonna be hot for the next week. I'm just very excited to be at Worlds and be able to help out with the Victory Road guys to do some coverage. And then we have YouTube and Twitch as well. Do follow us if you are watching, and we have the Discord server there. And of course, all information will be available in www.worldcupvgc.com, where you can follow the countries that you like, follow the players, and even get some inspiration from some of the teams there.
Indeed. One of the best websites. I mean, Victory Road's main website's also just really, really neat, but the World Cup one is just next level. I love the World Cup website. But of course, we have 5 matches coming our way today. Let's have a look at those. A bit of a preview into what we've got going on. Our first one is going to be Arbin versus Naoto here for Philippines versus Japan. A really interesting matchup, I think. I rate Arbin really, really high on the Philippines roster. Hasn't quite had the most incredible World Cup record so far, but he's a very, very strong player. And of course, Naoto on the other side. Naoto Kishida, also known as Channa, not having the most amazing results either so far, but anybody who's strong enough to make the Japanese roster is just going to be an incredible player.
Yeah, a lot of players that we are trying our best to feature as much as possible, and we really thank everyone for being able to share your games with the capture cards that you guys have. So continuing, we have a lot of Asian countries today. So we have Hong Kong, Thailand, and then we have India versus Costa Rica, and then followed by Argentina and Chile. Man, we're doing one extra today. So USA finally versus Brazil. So Joe, we saw him last week on stream, but this week, like things are getting a bit tough to schedule in some sense because people are traveling. So we are like kind of using Joe's match to be featured on stream. So we thank Joe for that.
Yeah, that's going to be an interesting one as well. America and Brazil have both already stamped their tickets, but they're both really, really solid teams with really amazing players. So it's going to be a fun, high-level match to watch regardless. And of course, playing off for seeding is a pretty important consideration because you already know which team you're going to be playing against potentially. You'll be playing in this case against the winner of Group 7 if you lose. So if they lose, they're playing South Korea. If they win, they're playing either Mexico or the Netherlands. So I think for both of these teams, they would probably prefer to get that first place spot to avoid the South Korea match, at least initially. So there is still something of importance on the line here in this America versus Brazil game.
Absolutely, because the story of both America and Brazil is so interesting. They both have an equal number of um, set wins, if I'm not wrong. And I guess you guys will kind of go into that story later. But let's go into our first match for now. So Philippines versus Japan in Group 5.
So far, 2 matches have been reported. It's currently sitting at 1-1. Shuji Endo getting the win there with a bit of a hot dog team, but not Rinya. You know, we don't really see that many non-Rinya hot dogs running around, so it's cool to see over there.
Yep. And the rest of the teams, Rogerson's team has been a bit unorthodox, but he has been using this team all through the season, and he's really comfortable with it, as shown from the 2-1 victory over a very interesting Calyrex Ice Groudon team from Kohei. Calyrex Ice and Groudon has been popping up quite a bit in Japan since we saw the team do well in the Japan Nationals. So a quick rundown on how these teams are doing in this group. Any team can still make it, if I'm not wrong. And for Philippines, they lost a close match 3-5 to Germany last week, whereas Japan is 100% true because they won in the first week of groups and the second week.
Yeah, so really it comes down to the results here, and of course in the other match. The sad thing for the Philippines is that they are kind of relying on Singapore a little bit. So it comes down to this weird situation where for either Philippines or Singapore to advance, the one of the favorites has to lose. You know, Germany and Japan probably the favorites in this group. If Germany wins against Singapore, they lock it up. They're advancing with Japan. Nothing else really matters. But if Singapore can beat Germany and then the Philippines beats Japan, things get really weird for that second place spot because they're tied on, I think, all tiebreakers across the board right now. So it might come down to how many games they can win. So even a 2-1 versus a 2-0, like things like that are actually really, really important in this group 5, as long as Germany doesn't just close it out. And Germany is currently losing 2-1. So it's very possible that does end up happening in this group.
Yeah, really well said. I can always count on you to come up with to kind of break down all these stories in these groups in particular, since I'm a bit of a noob in terms of sports and scores. So
well, you're here for the statistics. We wouldn't have all of this information to extrapolate from if we didn't have the statistics man himself.
Teamwork. So let's jump into the players here. So Arbin, a player that actually most of you, most people would know to be in the America, USA region. I think, if I'm not wrong, in California. Yeah, so he did well this year in the 2022 Secaucus Regionals, getting top 16. So a bit of CP there. And in 2019, he also made top 8 in the Hartford Regionals.
Yeah, Arbin is also a one of the professors who is allowed to run mid-season showdown. So he's a very well-regarded member of our local community here in the New Jersey, Philadelphia, New York area. Runs a lot of really cool tournaments, really great tournament organizer. But on top of all that, a very, very great player as well. And of course, Naoto on the other side, not that many results to speak of, especially compared to some of his Japanese teammates, but he's made the Japanese national team. He's always very, very high on the ladder, always represented in the Liberty Note monthly posts when they talk about the top 30 teams on the ladder. And recently did get top 32 in the World Cup Open as well.
Yeah, so very recent result, being able to get into the top cut, go X2, with around 300 to 400 players in our World Cup Open last month. So let's take a look at the teams here. I actually recognize the team from Arbin because he used this very team with a very interesting Zacian Kyogre with the Incineroar, Amoonguss, Landorus, and Tornadus together. Sometimes you might see a Katana in one of those slots, right? And he used this team to get top 16 in Secaucus Regional. So he must have some good experience with it. And from Naoto's end, this is also kind of an unorthodox Lunala and Groudon team, because sometimes you might see a Charizard somewhere, and it's also interesting to put that Porygon 2 in the mix.
Yeah, usually we saw sort of the Charizard variation of the Lunadon is pretty ubiquitous with the archetype right now. And before that was a thing, Thundurus instead of the Charizard was a thing. But Naoto not running either of those two Pokemon, opting instead to go with the Porygon 2, like you said. And the main abuser of the Sun mode is going to be that Venusaur, which is pretty common on these teams still. But regardless, very, very interesting takes on their respective archetypes, changing just a couple of things to maybe make the teams a little bit more their own.
Yep. So this will be a clash of rain versus sun again. As I would say this like in the stream or this all throughout the stream, that this can be a little teaser towards Worlds, because it really comes down to positioning, especially between both Kyogre and Zacian, to be able to just get into a good board state to help close out the game. And we also have that trick room element and that Among Us in Arbin's side, which could be very interesting. So right off the bat, we see the leads here with both Incineroars out on the field. Incineroar and Lunala for Naoto's end, and Incineroar and Landorus on Arbin's end, and we have all the Intimidates coming out, and notably Arbin's Incineroar went for the Intimidate first before Naoto's Incineroar.
All right, we're also about to get a little bit more information, seeing if the Landorus has the White Herb or not. We'll see. Most of them do tend to carry it, and it is. So Landorus still going to be sitting very comfortably at the neutral attack stat, and it looks ready to just go big, getting ready to just immediately start quaking. Threatening a fake out onto the opposing Incineroar, like you said, his is faster, so it's a bit of an awkward spot for Naoto to be in. It's going to be very important to see whether or not this Incineroar on Naoto's side has a Shucka Berry. That's going to be a big deal, because if it doesn't, this might just be the end of this Incineroar's life as soon as it began.
Yeah, well said. And at the same time, Naoto's side doesn't have a safe switch into Max Quake, because everything is going to take neutral from that Max Quake of the Landorus. And we also saw that interaction, which could be interesting to note for some players, that the Landorus... actually, if Landorus were to take 2 Intimidate drops, then the White Herb will go back to full. But I kind of messed up because both Incineroar and Landorus were in Arbin's side. But it seems like Arbin is kind of predicting a Trick Room play, possibly coming out from the Lunala, and then preempting and bringing in the Among Us on his side. And sure enough, the Landorus comes into Dynamax, and the Porygon 2 switch in could be interesting to be able to help soak up some damage.
It's a really, really smart play by Naoto there. The idea is pretty simple. You take a lot of damage because there's nothing that really wants to eat the Max Quake, and then you just click recover after Trick Room goes down. But Arbin, knowing that that is a possibility, already preemptively switching in the Amoonguss, so that's not really going to be an option. But Naoto opting to instead go for the Meteor Beam that would KO the Incineroar if it hits, but it's not going to be able to KO the Amoonguss. So it's especially with a Max Quake boost. This is going to be interesting to see how much this actually does. But overall, looks like a pretty decent turn number 1 here for Arbin, although not really getting a huge amount of value out of that first turn of Dynamax.
True, and at the same time, Naoto's threatening to switch in Incineroar again, then to further reduce Landorus's damage. So interesting plays coming out from both sides, and pretty smart of Naoto to bring in Porygon 2 to soak up the damage, and at the same time not set up Trick Room so easily, knowing that there's the Among Us in the back, and knowing that the Lunala is always being protected by the Shadow Shield. It's always free to get off important damage, right? A lot of damage out of the +1 from the Meteor Beam. But interestingly, Landorus, going for the Max Quake could help towards the near future to be able to boost both itself and Among Us up.
This is a very good turn by Naoto. The double up into the Lunala coming on in, going to go straight into a Protect. Now, Arbin does still get a boost, and he does still break the Shadow Shield, so it's not like nothing happened here, but still Naoto is doing a really, really good job stalling out this Dynamax so far. Recover coming in on the Porygon 2, not even going to be punished with a Spore. And overall, all that Arbin really gets out of that is a Max Quake boost, and I guess a little bit of information that the Lunala is probably not running Wide Guard.
True, yeah. Protect is always kind of becoming really, really common on Lunalas, and a lot of Lunala players think that Protect is a pretty important move, especially in this situation, to be able to kind of redirect moves from the Porygon 2 and just allow Porygon 2 to recover and then kind of stall out the Landorus's Dynamax here. So I think Arbin really needs to play as carefully as possible to be able to make full use of these special defense boosts all the way towards the late game, because the Porygon 2 and the Lunala are proving to be really hard to remove.
The other really awkward thing is that part of the longevity for an Amoonguss is that it can just switch out and recover HP constantly with its regenerator ability, but it at the same time kind of doesn't want to do that because it'll give up all of these Max Quake boosts. So it's a bit of a weird situation for Arbin to be in, where like, of all of the Pokemon, is this really the one you want to be stacking Max Quake boosts on? No Shucka Berry, that's going to be revealed at the very least. Big damage coming down onto the Incineroar here. And now the question is, what's going to go down on that Porygon 2? And of course, do we have safety goggles on the Incineroar? That's going to be answered right now, as yes, we do. Once again, the Amoonguss unable to accomplish anything on this turn.
Yeah, Amoonguss, like, sure enough, not going for any redirection moves because the opposing Pokemon are not threatening too much, especially with these 3 special defense boosts of the Max Quake. But catching the Incineroar on the switch in and being unable to spore is just really tough, and Incineroar easily just threatens a fake out onto the Amoonguss. But let's see if the Landorus with that Earthquake is able to do enough damage to pressure the Incineroar. So Arbin is still in a pretty okay position to kind of dish out damage. However, like, the Incineroar can easily switch out and Porygon can kind of keep going for foul plays to do a little bit of chip damage.
Yeah, this is going to be... It's just such a weird situation now where, like, both of the Pokemon benefit from switching out. Obviously, the Amoonguss has Regenerator, and the Landorus can reset the attack drop if it were to switch out, but also, you know, giving up those Max Quake boosts is such an unfortunate thing to have to do. Regardless, no Fake Out coming out this turn. It's a good KO there on the Incineroar. Landorus is going to take a little bit more damage here from that Porygon 2, but honestly, not doing that much with that foul play here. So, especially after the Intimidate, that will, of course, cause the foul play to do less damage. And in comes the Groudon. So we know all 4 Pokemon now for Naoto. And from here, this is probably going to be the Dynamax, I'd imagine. I don't really expect the Lunala to be the Dynamax here.
Yeah, that's true. But pulling the plug so early can be interesting. It can also be a bit like too early. So let's see how it goes, because I think like switching out the Landorus and kind of bringing it back in could be useful. However, Amoonguss just protected, if I'm not wrong. So a Max Quake into the Amoonguss slot is pretty safe, and it does make so much sense if you can kind of predict that there is a Kyogre in the back, you know, being able to attack the Groudon with special attacks. So yeah, it kind of does make sense to Dynamax early, and that Porygon 2 is just not going down, so Porygon 2 can keep like going for foul plays or just maybe even go for like a Trick Room to help the Groudon. So let's see what decisions Naoto makes here, because, you know, having Dynamax in the pocket is still one thing. It's always another thing to be able to take the important KOs and be able to close out the game.
This is going to be a very interesting turn, because I think Arbin is banking very heavily on that Porygon 2 clicking Trick Room here. We did see Arbin go for a Swords Dance, so Foul Play would do so much more damage to that Landorus if it goes into it. So a very, very interesting turn here as the Swords Dance goes off. Let's see what the Groudon goes into. I'd imagine it's just going to be a Max Quake into the Incineroar, and there it is. Shuck Up shown on both Incineroars now, and it's going to be able to take this hit pretty fine. And then the big question, though, is going to be, what is that Porygon 2 going for? That's still pretty big damage coming out of that Groudon, though, as well.
Yeah, -1 Groudon into the Sugar Berry. There's just a lot of information coming out from both players. The Incineroar on Naoto's end is Goggles, if I'm not wrong, right? So
yes. Oh yeah,
wow,
you're right.
That,
not Sugar.
Yeah. Oh, look at that foul play going into the +1 Landorus. Actually isn't able to take it out, which is interesting. So Landorus should be able to sort of dish out more chip damage, but really, are you able to threaten the Porygon 2 that much, right? With Porygon 2 always being able to take hits well and then go for recover. So one more Max Quake also threatens the kill onto the Incineroar from the Groudon side. So for me, thinking back, I'm interested in why like Arbin didn't consider switching the Landorus out to kind of put down more Intimidates on the Groudon to reduce its damage and kind of stall out Dynamax that way.
Yeah, I think that's definitely going to come back to bite Arbin in the end there. Just not really getting anything out of this Landorus this whole game, even though it's been on the field pretty consistently. So Naoto just positioning around the offensive threats of Arbin very, very well. Fly coming in is an idea. Like, that's probably the best move that the Landorus can go for here because, you know, if there is a Trick Room, it's going to be able to move last, so it won't be able to get hit, but also it won't go down to a foul play right now. But the problem is that Porygon 2 doesn't really care that much. Even if your Lando's +1, the Porygon 2 is still going to eat that hit for breakfast. It's not really going to care.
Yeah, and we saw the damage of the Max Quake from the Groudon into the Amoonguss. That's actually a lot of damage. So even if the Amoonguss were to go for Rage Powder to redirect the move, then the foul play will still go back into the Landorus. And it's very smart of Naoto to not fall for the bait of setting up Trick Room and just keep going for damage, knowing that his Pokemon are bulky enough to take hits. So really well managed there, and going for these 3 Max Quicks. You know, the Landorus went for 3 Max Quicks, and now Groudon's going for 3 Max Quicks in return. It's just kind of better for Naoto, all things considered.
For sure, but I don't think he's out of the woods yet now that I think about this, right? The Dynamax is over. We do have 3 Spadef on both of them, but the Kyogre comes in now. Water Spouts in the rain are going to be really, really threatening. Lunala can't really switch in because there's no Shadow Shield on it anymore. So the duo of Amoonguss and Kyogre can still apply a lot of pressure here. I don't know if it's going to be enough to remove the Porygon 2. The Porygon 2 should not go down to a Water Spout here. But even with 3 Quake Boosts, if that's like a Citrus Berry Groudon, which is a pretty common thing to see on a Lunadon team, this could end up still dishing out enough damage to at least take it very, very low. Maybe low enough for a Seed Bomb to pick it off with the Amoonguss in the end. This is a very big turn, and Arbin is not out of this yet. If he can remove this Groudon, and I mean, even if he doesn't remove it, it's not the end of the world. It's -2. Precipice Blades probably isn't going to do that much.
Yeah, really well said. And I feel like Arbin has been kind of managing the Dynamax really well, switching the Incineroar in and out, and always being able to help Amoonguss get that Regenerator health. And now Amoonguss is sitting at 70% health. So being able to kind of pressure Spore can also be useful. And Naoto actually switches Groudon out, possibly, having a strategy of sacking the Lunala and at the same time resetting the drops from the Groudon, and the Lunala just goes down like that, and Arbin correctly just clicks it's Life Orb Water Spout.
Yep. Life Orb Water Spout dishing out so much damage there. The recover coming in on the Porygon 2 is nice, but is it enough?
Whoa.
Because now we have the Groudon switching back in, and there's not going to be any rain anymore. That's great. But there's also going to be no Max Quake boosts on that anymore. Life Orb Kyogre at full HP, it's not going to one-hit KO the Groudon, but it's going to do so much damage here that a follow-up Origin Pulse should just be able to pick up both of these Pokemon. I think Arbin might have actually been able to do this, and it may have something to do with Naoto just being a little bit too greedy with those foul plays on the Porygon 2, not trusting that Trick Room was in fact the correct play.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Porygon 2 was kind of forced to go for the recover before being spot there, and it didn't reveal Eerie Impulse, so it could have been useful into the Kyogre, especially when Naoto intentionally switched the Groudon out to be able to switch in to take control of the weather. Here comes another Water Spout. This Life Orb is just putting in work for Arbin. Oh, but actually Groudon is able to take that pretty well, and let's see if Groudon is able to take out any of the Pokemon here, and the Fire Punch actually is able to take the Amoonguss out.
All right, so I think that's another very big reveal there. We do see that is the Assault Vest on that Groudon for sure. And that's also really interesting on a Lunadon team. Like, Assault Vest Groudon is pretty common, but we haven't really seen it on Lunadon that much. Lunadon does tend to run a Swords Dance Protect Citrus Berry set. So, very, very interesting information there, and something that Arbin is definitely going to be able to use to his advantage going forward, just the fact that he knows that that's what this Groudon is.
True, really a lot of information coming out from both players, for both players, in terms of the items and the moves, and this single target Precipice Blade is actually enough to take the Kyogre out. Kyogre was pretty close with that Origin Pulse in Sun, but still isn't able to take out the Groudon, and just proving that the Assault Vest works on Naoto's team, and maybe he had some plan with it, because that team usually has like Charizard, but maybe Naoto just wants to make his team as bulky and as slow as possible, and it seems to work out here.
Yeah, especially having options like that Porygon too. I wouldn't be surprised if it's carrying Eerie Impulse. There's a lot of options on that team to just be very, very bulky. It proved to work very well in that game. So the decision to switch out the Groudon at the end there by Naoto makes a lot of sense. When you have access to the Assault Vest, you know you're going to be able to take those 2 hits from the Kyogre, and that's going to be more than enough to just be able to win the game, as long as you hit your Precipice Blades, which Naoto, of course, did. I still think Arbin played that really, really well, managing to pin with the speeds of Kyogre and Amoonguss. I would imagine that Arbin did not know 100% that this was going to be an Assault Vest Groudon, so you're playing to that out of most Lunadon teams don't run Assault Vest, so if he's not Assault Vest, I can win by going for this endgame. So I think it was still a very well-played endgame there by Arbin, even though in the early game, he didn't quite get what he wanted out of his Landorus.
Yeah, I totally agree, and the way he kind of stalled the Groudon's max by smartly always switching the Amoonguss to be able to keep healing the Amoonguss back by switching Amoonguss out, right? I think that's really smart, and sort of pressuring it to put those intimidates down on the Groudon. But I think still good information going in, figuring out that the Groudon is the Assault Vest set. Maybe like Arbin can kind of approach the matchup a little bit differently by bringing maybe Kyogre early, but instead Arbin just brings in Landorus and Amoonguss. No Incineroars from both sides now, and a complete switch up from Naoto, going for the Lunala and the Regieleki lead.
This kind of looks like it might be a hard read from Naoto, because I don't really understand what this Regieleki accomplishes into this lead, which is exactly what Arbin did in the first game. So it's, or I guess not exactly what Arbin did. He did bring the Incineroar in game number 1, but still, this is an incredibly bad lead for Naoto, at least on paper. So it's going to be very critical to see that he pulls something out here. Is he going to Volt Switch the Eleki out? Is he going to go for some crazy Dynamax? I don't know. This is going to be an interesting one, Evan.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, maybe doubling into the Amoonguss makes sense, but no, the Volt Switch comes out, and it shows the Life Orb on the Regieleki, more information there, and Landorus should be able to move next. But let's see what Naoto switches in, knowing that the Landorus has that White Herb, still switches in the Incineroar to kind of burn the White Herb there. Yeah, I'm interested to see what the Landorus goes for next, and being able to break the Shadow Shield could be useful. And from the Lunala's end, yeah, what can Lunala do to kind of keep the Amoonguss in control, since Amoonguss is always going to click Spore in this case? Wow, Swords Dance actually comes out.
Yeah, this is a really, really bold play here by Arbin. I don't really see a world where Meteor Beam picks up the KO here on Landorus. So thinking, you know what? The Eleki can't hit me anyway. Eleki basically only learns Electric-type moves. And if he brings in the Incineroar, I'm just going to go to +2. Everything's going to be fine. But that is an incredible amount of damage coming out there from the Meteor Beam. Is it enough, though? Because the Landorus is just going to KO the Incineroar. So there's not really anything that Naoto can do here, except for, I guess, try to fake out the Lando. But, I mean, if it maxes, fake out's not going to do 36 damage, right? Like, surely.
But still, like, Dynamaxing the Landorus is such a dangerous thing to do, because if Regieleki in the back, Regieleki showing Life Orb, it could have, if just so happens the Regieleki has a coverage move for the Landorus, and Landorus might be in trouble, and you still have that Shadow Shield on the Lunala. Sure, I think Lunala still has to burn a turn of sleep, but yeah, with that crazy amount of damage from the Meteor Beam, it's really impressive into this Landorus. It's a very tough decision for Arbin to kind of Dynamax the Landorus now.
Oh, the timeout here from Arbin. He did lock in Max Quake already, so he will be able to Dynamax the Landorus. I do feel like staying in. I think it's I think the Amoonguss is just sporing the Lunala again now. I feel like if you just Seed Bomb the Lunala to get rid of Shadow Shield, I feel like that's an amazing play here, but I don't know if that is in the first slot. So a bit of an unfortunate situation here for Arbin. He is going to be able to pick up a KO here on the Incin most likely, and it is Protect in slot 1, so at least the Amoonguss is not going to get like super punished. Fake Out goes into the Lando, dealing enough damage to KO it if it didn't Dynamax. But yeah, this is going to be an interesting one. Max Quake, the move of choice. I do like that Amoonguss stays on the field because, like you said, sometimes Reggie, he does carry a move like Hyper Beam, something that can hit the Landorus. So having that redirect on the field is still going to be very, very important, but very unfortunate that the Shadow Shield stays up on the Lunala.
Good point, yeah. So, yeah, if the first slot on the Amoonguss was an attacking move, then things would be a little bit better with this Landorus being able to pressure a lot of damage, and with Amoonguss, like you said, always being able to redirect moves. But here comes the Groudon instead for Naoto. Yeah, really interesting to see how this interaction plays out, because Landorus really can't realistically take out any of the two Pokemon in front of it, so has to just do as much meaningful damage as possible. And I can always tell that Arbin is playing towards that Kyogre endgame, and I think that's a really good strategy, just using the Landorus to dish out as much damage, as much of the chip damage as possible for Kyogre to be able to come in the back and finish things up, right?
Yeah, this is going to be a big move here for Naoto, as he's going to go for the Dynamax, most likely on the Groudon. Arbin opting to keep the Amoonguss in play here, an interesting decision. It's going to at least keep the Landorus alive, so it's showing that he really is valuing this Landorus' longevity. It is a +2 Landorus, so it makes a lot of sense. But this is going to be a very, very important turn to find out whether or not the Lunala is going to stay asleep, because I'm pretty sure that Amoonguss is just going to go down.
True, Lunala took a turn of sleep last turn, so here comes the Max Quake going into the Groudon actually, while doing pretty impressive damage. That's almost 40% to a Dynamax Groudon. And let's see if Lunala is able to wake up, because Lunala should be able to move next. But wow, Groudon is actually faster than the Lunala, or Lunala might be going for Trick Room here and goes for the Max Flare to remove the Amoonguss completely, instead of opting to for Max Quake. Yes, and the Trick Room does come up.
Yeah, that's worst case scenario there for Arbin. Oh man, that really, really hurts for him. Leaving the Amoonguss on the field there by Arbin is an interesting decision. I really felt like a Kyogre switch in there would have been really, really neat, because then, you either keep the Landorus alive, or you have a full HP Kyogre switched in the rain, which is also kind of neat. But opting to keep the Landorus alive there with that Rage Powder, it's an understandable play, right? The problem is that if your opponent wakes up, you're just kind of in a lot of trouble. And now Naoto with an awakened Lunala, a bit of a beefy Groudon, and also going to be moving before anything on the other side of the field.
Yeah, I think it's also difficult to call what that Groudon is going to do, especially in this situation when Naoto is up a game. So maybe kind of expecting Max Quake if Naoto were to predict the Incineroar switch in to kind of burn the Shuka Berry there, but Naoto just goes for the Max Flare, hoping for the Lunala to wake up, and gets it and sets up the Trick Room. So Arbin now has to kind of adjust on the fly and switches the Landorus out mid Dynamax, brings in the Rain, and hopefully Incineroar is able to kind of do something meaningful here.
Well, Darkest Lariat is doubly super effective here. Of course, that's going to be offset somewhat by the Shadow Shield, but this is still going to dish out a lot of damage there to that Lunala. The most important offensive threat here is really well and truly the Incineroar, which is kind of funny to say. Deal Spike going into the Kyogre, though, really not the best use of that move at the end of the day. Arbin with a great defensive switch in. And Meteor Beam is going to come on in. I guess this is going to be a big moment of finding out whether or not 90% misses this time around, because I think Arbin needs some kind of RNG to go his way. Oh wait, he already used Power Herb!
Oh, yeah, he used it once. So, wow, Naoto is actually choosing to go for it. Maybe expecting that the Landorus will just go down there. But maybe, yeah, that's really interesting. So, one thing to note maybe from the Groudon is that Groudon purposely set up the Max Steel Spike. So could this
like +1 defense matter into this Darkest Lariat. So let's see. Kyogre does go for the protect, which makes sense because if Groudon were to target into the Kyogre, so the Lunala just goes down. So let's see where the Groudon targets into, and if this protect from the Kyogre is worth it.
Well, no Shuck-Up procking, so that means only one thing, Evan. Kyogre eats that like a boss, and all of a sudden, things are not over. Now, of course, Arbin made some great plays there. He's stalled a couple turns of Trick Room. He got rid of one of the Restricteds. He's stalled out Dynamax. Like, everything is looking great. There's still a Regieleki. And the Regieleki looked really weird at turn 1. It's staring down an Amoonguss and a Landorus. It's not going to accomplish much in that situation, but it is something that Naoto has as an option to just end the game if the Kyogre is all Arbin has to lean on. So retaining that Landorus in the back here is proving to be a very, very important piece of the puzzle. And now, with an intimidated Incin, maybe this is actually a really beneficial, or an intimidated Groudon, maybe this is a really beneficial Trick Room now for Arbin. He's going to be able to apply a lot of pressure to that Regieleki.
Yeah, the Kyogre we saw in Game 1 is slower than the Groudon, so let's see how this plays out, because the Groudon does have to get off and attack into the Kyogre. So Kyogre has to use all its might to tank the move coming out from the Groudon, and maybe Precipice Blades also might not hit. So going for this parting shot and then another Intimidate from this Landorus just helps a lot. So I think the Groudon has a lot to do to remove this Kyogre from the field. So this does make sense for Arbin, and he really maneuvered it really well to get into this spot.
Yeah, this is a big moment here as we see the Kyogre taking the hit. The question now is, will Origin Pulse connect? And it does. The double connect coming in. Is it enough to remove both? Yes, it is. And Arbin coming back, tying up the set 1-1. That was a really impressively well-played game. I thought Arbin was in so much trouble when that Lunala woke up on turn number 1, but that was just really, really masterfully played.
It's really cool to see, and I was wondering, going for the Darkest Lariat from the Incineroar into the Lunala, that could be really strange, but just fully understanding that maybe the Incineroar's job is to take out the Lunala, and going for those two Darkest Lariats to be able to take it out completely, and a little bit greedy from Lunala to go for the Meteor Beam. I'm not sure if Naoto forgot or was it strategic, because going for the Moongeist Beam +1, right, it already consumed the Power Herb. Going for the Moongeist Beam into the Kyogre would have made all the difference. So Arbin just played all the way to his outs and never gave up, and that was very impressive. And I'm still a bit I'm still reeling from how he's able to get out from a sticky situation, even in Trick Room, to be able to close out the game with that Kyogre.
Yeah, really embracing the mantra of never give up, never surrender there. And now we're going to have to see how Arbin plays out this game number 3. It's going to be really interesting because on the one hand, I felt like Arbin, the early game of game number 1 looked pretty solid for Arbin, I thought. And then Naoto managed to come back and win it. And then in this one, the early game or the mid game looked really solid for Naoto, and then Arbin manages to turn it around and win it. So this is a really fire set we've got going on here. I'm really glad we're going to be getting a game number 3, and let's see how the adaptation is. It's going to be Incineroar and Lunala coming on out here for Naoto, with Kyogre coming out as the lead for Arbin. So overall, that is an interesting lead. I think we already saw that the Incineroar on Arbin's side is faster, so this could be an incredibly good lead here for Arbin.
Yeah, going for fake out easily into the opposing Incineroar and then going for Water Spout to kind of remove it from the field. But you still have to kind of guess whether the Groudon is going to switch in there and whether it makes sense for the Lunala to go for Trick Room. Wow, Arbin is really clicking the moves really fast, and wow, we actually see Arbin bring Zacian instead in this game 3 situation. It's so interesting to see players adjust, especially in game 3. The Landorus in game 2 was doing so was really impressive with that turn 1 Swords Dance play, but we're not seeing it at all here.
I like this a lot on paper. I like it because the Lunala has been clicking Meteor Beam a lot. So bringing the only resistance when you haven't been bringing Zacian at all is a really nice way to maybe catch a Meteor Beam on the switch-in. But this is also a way less safe play in some ways because you're burning a turn of Dynamax straight away with the Kyogre. But I think this is probably overall the most all-around play. I think the one that I was seeing was probably not as good. And Arbin is making a really, really bold maneuver here. He's going to be able to pick up that Incineroar for sure. There's no switch out coming. And if Meteor Beam is the call, all of a sudden Naoto is in a lot of trouble very early on.
Yeah, that's true. With no Incineroar back to provide fake-out pressure or to intimidate that Zacian, then Arbin is in a really good spot to be able to go for the double up of Behemoth Blade and a Max Geyser. So the fake-out actually goes into the Kyogre. So wow, so well read by Arbin going for the Dynamax here to secure the KO on the Incineroar. It was safety goggles, so it's not Focus Sash, and it does go down like that. And let's see what the Kyogre, the Lunala does, and he calls it right. The Lunala goes for the Meteor Beam, and you wouldn't expect the Zacian to come in Game 3, and it's just working out so well for Arbin.
It's such a hard read by Arbin here. Like, even if Naoto clicks Trick Room instead, like, it's a little bit of an awkward spot for Arbin, but he was so confident that he knew how Naoto would play this game out. Zacian takes that hit like nobody's business, and all of a sudden, things that, like, this set looked over. Like, halfway through Game 2, this looked like a 2-0 for for Naoto. And now, he's in so much trouble here. Porygon 2 comes in, but, like, Porygon 2 is great, but a Life Orb Kyogre might even be able to pick that up, even through Eviolite.
One thing that Naoto has going for him is the Lunala has Protect. So, it can be a little bit of a mind game as to which Trick Room setter to double target, but I'm not sure if my Kyogre calcs, like, I'm not very experienced in that aspect, but I'm not sure if this, like, Life Orb Kyogre can remove the Porygon entirely, and if Arbin is not sure too, like, he kind of has to play a little bit defensively, as we do see him lock into the substitute here. It could be an interesting idea.
Yeah, I think even if it's modest 252, the Kyogre is still looking at a roll there, so maybe Arbin is thinking, you know, it's probably not the most viable thing to do, but it's actually going to be Ally revealed from the Porygon 2, which, number one, is really good information, and number two, might just not matter if the Porygon 2 goes down. Like, that might end up being a really, really unfortunate situation here, but let's see how much damage this does right into the Porygon 2, and it is enough. The Porygon 2 is deleted. There's just no end to the carnage that this Kyogre is putting on.
Yeah, but the Trick Room actually gets set up. Naoto revealing Ally Switch all the way towards the end. We were kind of thinking that it might be Eerie Impulse, but actually it is Ally Switch. Kind of reminds me of the Shoma Honami Porygon 2 set with Speed Swap and Ally Switch. So the Groudon actually is able to come in for free here. So wow, actually Arbin kind of covered his ground there with this substitute on the Zacian, and having to break the substitute can be a little bit of a task for Naoto, and it might take some attention away from the Kyogre that still has one more Dynamax turn left. Notably, the Groudon is Assault Vest, right? So it might not be able to protect, so we're going to see some weather wars here, I believe.
Yeah, but of course, Max Flare is not going to be a great thing for Naoto to be clicking on his max turns, generally speaking, because, it's going to be in the rain after the first one, and it might be a good idea to click it now, maybe, but the Quake is just going to be a really, really good option. So I think at the end of the day, Arbin probably just wins the Weather War. We'll have to see if that gets him through the rest of this game. So, this is an interesting play, but we know that the Lunala is, in fact, going to be moving after this Groudon. So Wolfie, this goes into the Kyogre. Really, really good read on the Protect there. And I think Moongeist Beam, this is a Zero Ball Kyogre. +1 Moongeist Beam might be able to pick this up. Oh, not quite. But the Life Orb Recoil, I think, will. Still, though, it's enough to get one last attack, and it's going to dish out some damage to the Groudon. Assault Vest, Sun, +1 Groudon. A lot of things mitigating that water move there. But it is just enough to win the Weather War before Kyogre allows a free switch into probably the Incineroar.
It might be Incineroar, it might also be Amoonguss, which could be interesting, right? So I'm really just learning a lot from how Arbin is playing, because, like, I like to say this to some of my friends, but Arbin feels like he's playing from the heart instead of from the mind, and he's just being able to read Naoto as much as he can. But that protect on the Zacian was a little bit unfortunate, and like with Lunala at +1 special attack, there's quite a lot of pressure coming out from Naoto, and you can only spore one Pokemon.
Yeah, this is also a very interesting situation because I think Moonguy's Beam is gonna pick up the Zacian as long as the substitute's removed. So a double into the Zacian does mean that something goes to... Oh, actually, I guess the Spore does go off first, of course, Trickling being a factor. But, alright, let's see. This is going to be coming down at least somewhat to sleep turns, but the Zacian is just going to be able to apply so much pressure. It's not going to pick up a KO or anything, but 2 hits should be more than enough. And, well, Moonguy's Beam going to come right on in. What's it targeting? It's targeting the sub, and the sub goes down. So Naoto, very much in pray for wake-ups mode. It worked in game number 2. We'll see if it worked here in game number 3. Really, really, really needs that Groudon to wake up next turn.
Yeah, I love how Arbin is targeting, because from his point of view, we know that the Incineroar is in the back, so Incineroar's only job is to take out the Lunala. So going for the Spore plus the Beamer Blade into the Zacian slot makes so much sense. Like, especially knowing that the Groudon is kind of locked to only be able to move and not be able to protect because of that Assault Vest, so really using all the information to his advantage here.
Well, here we go. Spore going off once again here into the Lunala. And, well, let's see. Turn number 1 has already been exhausted. And, he wakes up again! The Max Wave goes off. That's going to be a very deceased Zacian. But, of course, the Dynamax is over now. Even Lariat should be able to pick up the Groudon at this point. Or Seed Bomb. That's another option that he has. So, no special attacks even left on this side of the map. Or on this side of the field. So, I think Arbin still has this. But we'll see if he's able to claw this back.
Maybe the last turn, like maybe Naoto clicked a bit too quickly, because I thought maybe Steel Spike could have been cool to go into the Zacian, maybe reading that the Zacian would want to just stay in there. So over here, the Incineroar gets to switch in for free. It could be good for Arbin, and the Groudon goes small. And wow, the way Arbin builds his team to be able to navigate in and out of Trick Room is just so amazing, because both Among Us and Incineroar are going to move first here.
Yeah, here we go. This is going to be it. I mean, I guess doubling into the Groudon is fair enough, just in case, because you know it doesn't have Protect. You already know it's Assault Vest, so you're not risking throwing to a Protect. It's just to make extra sure here. The Seed Bomb really should pick this up, though.
And I think, like, you always have that Lunala in control with the Among Us on the field, so just really amazing to see. Oh yeah, Seed Bomb is physical, so down goes the Groudon, and the Incineroar gets the free Darkest Lariat into the Lunala. It's a good play, and just not going for the fake out instead, knowing full well the tools that he has, especially with that Seed Bomb. Lunala isn't able to wake up on turn 1. The Trick Room goes back to normal, but if Lunala were to go for that Meteor Beam there, you know, at most you can only take out one Pokemon, because the Among Us will always be on the field to be able to redirect. So wow, so well positioned by Arbin all the way towards the end game.
Yeah, and this is going to be more than enough. The Wake Up comes on in. Moonguy's Beam going to be able to dish out quite a lot of damage to that Amoonguss, but none of that is going to matter with one more Darkest Lariat coming on out. How much does this actually do? Pretty decent, you know. It's a respectable showing here by the Lunala right before it is removed. The final KO of the set. Arbin with an incredible comeback, looking so down and out in the middle of game number 2, and then managing to not just clutch out that, but play one of the most read-heavy games that we've seen in this World Cup. Just reading every single move from the leads to the turn 1 moves to just everything was perfect there by Arbin. Just a really, really impressive game.
Oh, bringing the Zacian is amazing, right? To see from our perspective. So thanks a lot to Arbin for kind of showing us how like this kind of team can be maneuvered and can be played, and going up against like a Japanese player with a lot of moves and very interesting text coming out from a team that you might think seem familiar, but with a lot of surprises, is still able to make full use of game 3, get good information out of games 1 and 2 and be able to do so well in game 3.
Yeah, it was a really cool take on Lunadon by Naoto as well. Like, we've been giving a lot of credit to Arbin, deservedly, but Naoto built a really cool version of Lunadon there. And in game number 1, he played really, really well. In game number 2, he got himself into a really good position. A little bit of luck with the wake up there initially, but overall, I thought there was a lot to be impressed by on Naoto's side as well. It just wasn't quite enough to take on a top form Arbin. That's who showed up today.
Yeah, and like the assault vest on the Groudon does make sense. Like in game 1 it worked really well, but then in games 2 and 3, kind of being locked to not being able to protect, especially in Trick Room with the pressure coming out from Spore, then that might kind of bite Naoto in the back there. So interesting to see how all these dynamics play out and how the players are able to make full use of the information to sort of select their moves and respond accordingly to their opponent. So just what a nice way to start off the stream. And we actually have 4 more matches for you guys. So coming up next, we have Thailand, Akarapon from Thailand versus Nga Hin from Hong Kong. So you don't want to miss this. Don't go away.